Jason.
The adoption cycle is very similar.
This is an ROI panel, right?
The adoption cycle is very similar to other technologies out there. I mean, think back when cell phones or email first came on the scene. Not everybody jumped into that pool at the same time. Well, now we can't live without those tools. So it's something where this is not going to happen, all overnight. Yes, 2009 has been a big social media year, but it's not the year. 2010 will be, and 2011 will be too. So it's a gradual adoption, and if you're not using email today, you know where you're at. So
see, I would make the argument that social media is not a gradual acceptance. It's been an exponential acceptance.
From a macro standpoint.
Yeah, because for example, Boston College isn't even giving out emails anymore. They're just communicating through their various social media platforms. Very interesting stuff. Dominic, recently there was a Mashable survey that found that 84% of social media programs do not measure return on investment. So why do you think this is?
Well, developers, their goal is not to you think about something like Twitter, who, for the longest time, people every day, every time there's some new revenue model, some change to their site, they're wondering if this is what they're doing to monetize it. A lot of these people go into the social media development and the software not planning on making money, although the goal, the end, the exit strategy probably is to make money at some point, but not to make money along the way. So all these great new social media things come out. In 2007 and in 2008, there were how many Twitter clones out there? Every single one of them thought they could do one better than the other. The goal was not to make money on it and do advertising. It was to get the critical mass there. So again, it comes back to goals. What are these people trying to achieve with their software? Is it to get the critical mass there, like with Facebook, and get as many people there as possible, probably, and then start figuring out ways to monetize it. We talk about all these, like something like Mint, which is not necessarily a social media software, but it is kind of in that realm where, they did a very good job of monetizing very early. And that was their goal. Obviously, they're financial people. They figured that out pretty quickly. This is something they want to do. People from Twitter, two software nerds, developer nerds, that just, I wanted to do something that was pretty cool. So that's probably why. They're two different, diametrically opposed types of people. The software developers are much less likely to try to figure out what their ROI is, and they just want to get people there first. Which and probably their accountant's like, hey guys, we need to figure out a monetization. Jeez, oh man.
A good word.
Yeah, monetization.
Spell that.
Yeah, that's trying to make money on the other hand. So it depends on what their goals are, but the overall goal should be at one point make some money.
I have a different answer.
And I would love to hear that.
It's boring, and it's a lot of fun to create a social media program, design it, execute it, get into the new channels, start the conversations, engage people. It's fun. That's the active part. That's the creative part. That's the involving part. ROI is dull and tedious and boring, and no one wants to do it. And you actually have to read reports. You have to check your website analytics. You have to track the number of people coming in. Someone has to pay attention to this minutia that I can't stand.
Yeah. I think the funny thing is on this board, I think all of us would say we hate that minutia. So we're like pawning it off on other people, right? I mean, so.
But someone has to be doing it. Otherwise, you can't prove ROI unless someone said, took a look and kept a timeline and said, I launched the blog on this date. On this date we got this many comments. This is when we started tweeting. This is when the Columbus office got involved. Someone's got to track that and then measure other activities that followed to see what generated what impact.
I'd like to add on that, because I think it was a really good point. I mean, you really have to establish baselines first. If you don't have analytical software that you can see what has gone to date, that's probably a priority before you can think about the social media nonsense. Thinking about that editorial calendar, okay, here are the things that I'm going to be doing over this next year, and then at those different intervals of you doing them, you say, okay, where am I at now? Where am I at here? Where am I at here? But you have to think this stuff through. You can't say, well, I'm going to do some sort of contest in May, and it's going to be sweet, and we're going to put it on Twitter, and it's going to be awesome. No, you have to think this stuff through of what your goals are, what your strategy is, and do it, do it quarterly or do it, twice a year, whatever that thing is, and so you can establish what worked and what didn't, because it makes it a whole lot easier to say, okay, we had this many people go to the site, or we had this many people sign up for this form, or we had this many people sign up to the email.
What were you saying about Dylan Bourne?
My hands are waiting.
That's why a lot fail, because there is no path, there is no plan. So they're jumping in, they're just shooting in the dark, and that can last for a while. But long term, again, those numbers mean nothing without a plan to measure them against. So I don't mind numbers.
I think too, it's there are certain companies that have been dismissive with social media ROI, and you can look at United Airlines, for example, because ROI can be negative, by the way. I mean, it's not always a positive figure. And the effect that United Breaks guitars had on their stock price was rather substantial. Oliver Blanchard recently had a brilliant presentation on social media ROI, which is up on slideshare.net, and he gave 2 reasons for social media investments: cost reduction and generate more revenue. So my question to you, Jason, is are these really the core fundamentals of social media investment? And if not, what are the others? It's a 2-part question. You have 30 seconds.
I have a calculator.
Do you want me to Google something?
Spreadsheet, cost reduction, what was the other?
Generate more revenue.
Well, I don't remember.
And you must answer in the form of a question.
What is...
we think we're a lot funnier than you guys did.
Someone mentioned, I think as John mentioned it before, ROI does boil down to several baseline things. Are you saving time? Are you making money? Are you reducing costs? Are you generating revenue? That's, for business, that's why businesses run. Nonprofits, perhaps they have different motives, but there's still those aspects to all organizations where you have to have income generated through any type of means, whether you're producing widgets, whether you're fundraising, whether you're bringing in students through admissions, let's say. Cost reductions, that's not a topic that hasn't been killed for the last 18 months. And it's on everyone's mind, and it will continue to be. And every year or two, it takes different formats. And I think this is a way where it's a different way. You mentioned customer service, specifically with the airlines. Well, if people are going online and complaining about you, shouldn't you be there? You found out the hard way. But there were others that were there early and took care of problems. My favorite example I'm jumping around, but my favorite example from an airline's perspective is when they out the people that are complaining but won't pick up the phone or answer an email that they've tried to help. Well, all of a sudden, that person shrinks real quick. So instead of being this person that's causing a lot of problems, the companies defended themselves, and they defended themselves in a tasteful, tactful way, and every company should have that right out there. But again, it's published interaction. It's published interaction.
And searchable.
And very searchable, says the search guru. So yeah, I do think it boils down to those 2 areas: cost reduction and revenue generation, income creation.
I think that in that same presentation he mentioned, Oliver, that social media isn't free, and so many people get into it thinking that it's going to be a cost-reducing type of activity, and it's going to be something easy. We can have the intern do it, but I mean the time, the technology, and the people time, or the people that are doing it is pretty pretty intensive. If you want people to get up to speed on this, there's a learning curve to be had. There has to be some sort of baseline benchmarking being done here. That takes time. This stuff is not free. This thing is not easy, cheap way to do things. This can be very very fruitful if you do it correctly, but can be very expensive as well.
I absolutely agree with the time piece, but I think there still can be cost reductions in terms of, and this is where ROI can get fuzzy. Is that if you don't answer that complaint, what is the cost to you? There will be costs. Some of them measurable, some of them long-term and immeasurable. The United one, that was a very measurable one because for those who don't know, it was this artist had his guitar broken. He watched it being broken, I guess, as being unloaded from the cargo hold. And he wrote a really bad song about it, posted it on YouTube, and millions of views later, you got an idea that United brings guitars. That was what he said.
Yeah, as a quick side note to that story, he flew United 2 weeks ago, and they lost his luggage. No! True story. And he was actually flying to an event in Denver, Colorado called Social Media and Customer Service. He will be writing more songs.